Boom, we're live. And today I want to welcome you to a gentleman from Squirro, Dorian Sells. It's brilliant to have Dorian on the show today. This is a LinkedIn Live that we're bringing you on this Friday. So whether you're in wherever you are in the world, whether it's nighttime, lunchtime, or you're just waking up over in the Americas, it's great to have you with us today. And today we're going to be interviewing Dorian, who's got an interesting background and really looking at everything to do with insight engines, analytics, data. And before we get into that, because we really want to add value to you as an audience reader and as someone that's part of the LinkedIn community, I'd like to introduce you to Dorian. And I think it'd be best if Dorian introduces himself. So, Dorian, welcome to a LinkedIn Live. Can you give our audience a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your story, and what your path has been with Squirro, please, sir?
Sure. Thank you, Tom, for having me. A privilege to be here today with you and the esteemed audience today. Welcome from my side here from lovely Zurich to the audience around the world. My name is Dorian. I'm co-founder of Squirro. Squirro is not my first digital gig I did. I've done with my same team, actually, a number of digital gigs over the past 25 years. Back 25 years, I had the privilege to be part of an university institute in the eastern part of Switzerland in St. Gallen, where we, with a company called Namix, which later on became the largest e-business consultancy, built literally the first web pages for some well-known brand names like UBS. And funny side story there, Tom, right? I remember with my, at the time, professor in information systems going to UBS and introducing them to the first web page. I was about 95 or so, right? And we saw the top rise of UBS. You know what they said? We don't need this. People come to our counters. Money is not something that you're going to do in this novel thing called the internet. And then we had something else. My professor had a kind of like Steve Jobs capability. So he pulled one up and said, I have one more thing.
Yeah.
And he showed, together with him, we showed the audience the first e-banking transaction from a PC to a PC. I mean, there was electronic payments before, but this
Yeah.
was the first time you could really show from one PC to one PC, you wire $100. And you know what people told us there from UBS? Oh no, we don't need that. Money is trust. You will never entrust that to a computer.
Yeah.
We both know, Tom, how the whole story ended, right?
Yeah.
Today, everything is digital. Later on, I moved on to found and build Switzerland's largest public website, which became local.ch. We digitized the whole of the yellow page and local search space in Switzerland. And now for the past 6, 7, 8 years or so, plus minus, with always the same team, my co-founders, Patrice and Tony,
Yeah.
and a wonderful team of colleagues over the past years, we've been going at Squirro.
That's incredible. And it's always interesting to hear. And I think I was looking, was it the headlines saying that the internet's just a massive fad and it's not going to be anything big and people aren't going to use it? And I'm sure it was in like places like the New York Times and there were headlines saying the internet is
Yeah,
just
yeah.
different
Other
almost.
anecdote from those early days, right?
Yeah.
We were invited to meet with the equivalent of New York Times in Switzerland, which is called the Neue Zürcher Zeitung, which is sort
Yeah.
of the paper of record in Switzerland. And they were at the time chief editor. That was about 2002 or three or so.
Yeah.
And we were the youngsters, right? And they were the establishment. And you know what they told us youngsters, when we told them the internet and the internet's going to change the business and all that? They told us, we survived the oil crisis and the oil shock back in the 70s.
Yeah.
That also waned eventually. It's going to happen the same thing with the internet. It's a fad today. It's going to fade out over the next couple of years. That was the approach of some.
Yeah. And what would you say that approach has changed to now, then, Dorian, with new technologies we're seeing? Maybe like not necessarily being a fad, but we're seeing AI come in a lot, and it's getting very popularized. What do you think? Do you think there is something that people are thinking it's not going to be the next big thing, but really it is actually building that way? Is it maybe people not actually understanding the power of analytics or something?
Well, my view is this, right? Um, After 20 years of a digital revolution that kind of like turned upside down literally every corner of our daily lives, right?
Yeah.
Who would have thought that our youngsters would today spend probably more time on their iPhones and other mobile phones than with their parents or teachers or so? But that's the reality, right?
Yeah.
Nobody could dream of 25 plus years ago. So everybody today, if there is something new digital coming along, actually sometimes goes the opposite direction of those folks I described before, saying, oh, the internet is a fad. Today, everything is a bit overhyped. The same, I think, is with AI. I think it's largely overhyped. And my point is this, right? Everybody talks about Elon Musk and Elon Musk being a genius with the electric car. He surely is.
Mm.
But it's not so genius what he tells about, as an example, autonomous driving.
Yeah.
You know why? His own lawyers last year went to the National Surface Transportation Board and the authority that oversees surface transportation in the US. And you know what they declared there? On a
Yeah.
scale of 1 to 5, 5 being full autonomous driving, at
Yeah.
best we do 3. We are far away from 5. Now, Elon Musk claims different, but his lawyers go to the NSTB and say this is the reality.
Yeah.
You know why? Obviously, because of liability exposure, if they would claim otherwise. And the truth here is, there is no such thing as autonomous driving for some years to come. I come
Mm.
from a country with lots of mountains, with lots of snow in winter times. Go do autonomous driving on a covered, snow-covered road. How
Yeah.
would any of these lidar elements recognize where the road ends and where the river starts, right? You
Yeah.
can't. There is no recognition. And I do not say with that, and that's not the important point. I do not say with that that autonomous driving is an illusion or so.
Yeah.
It's just not yet ready for prime time. If you think about it, right, the change has been fundamental. So what I want to say with that is, if you take the hype out of the equation and you simply focus on what's at core, what's happening here,
Yeah.
what we do at the moment is we put into practice what our parents and grandparents have thought out.
Yeah.
Machine learning, that's the way I'd rather call it instead of AI, has been largely thought out by our parents and grandparents, especially our grandparents, 40, 50, 60 years ago.
Yeah.
Just the compute was not there to make it a reality. Now it is here, and now you can make it a reality.
Yeah.
So that machine learning thing is here for a short time, and we're just in the infancy period of that. So what I
Yeah.
want to say is, it's probably one of those elements where this famous quote comes in, that you overestimate the short-term impact, but you
Yeah.
fundamentally underestimate the long-term outcome of the whole thing. So that's my view. I think to
Yeah.
simply now discard after some failed experiments, example, IBM selling its Watson division,
Yeah. Saw that
which
the other day.
was sort of praised as this is the new frontier for a big company like IBM.
Yeah.
So I don't think one should now make the mistake to think it is not good. It will
Yeah.
fundamentally reshape every bit of our business as much as the digitization did 20 years ago. That's
Yeah.
my view.
I think that's a really good view, Dorian, because I always look at it similar to that, thinking there's a lot of predictions and a lot of weight on what's coming to us, and almost as if we're trying to jump the gun. So it overhypes itself, and you think, well, let's just focus on today of what we've got available to us rather than looking at what's going to be here in 10 years. As fun as it is, I mean, I'm a big fan of, everyone knows, I'm a big fan of VR and metaverse and all those technologies similar to AI are yet to come. But
Mhm.
as you said, AI, people forget that we're still in its infancy. I think it was I look at around maybe 2012 is where I saw it getting quite popular and quite like starting to really be implemented and built up. That's so young. You think the world's been around billions of years, and here we are claiming that we know
Here we
everything
are,
about
right?
it within
Yeah.
10 years. It doesn't make sense to me. But it's a really interesting point that you're making, Dorian. And I guess I'd like to know, you mentioned it there with LiDAR, and I guess you could look at IoT and the sensors that allow us to collect these pieces of data. Do you think there is currently a data analytics revolution? Do you think people are getting behind it, or what would you say further to that?
I do think so. That's happening. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I do think that it is a bit like that famous hype cycle curve for Gartner, right?
Yes.
Things go up exponentially, then it goes down. You come through the valley of disillusionment, and then eventually you come, I believe it's called plateau of productivity. And
Yeah.
I think some of these technologies are at the moment sort of in the downhill slide, right? Take IoT, or take even one before IoT. Take as an example drones.
Yeah.
Tom, you and I remember that, right? 5 years ago, everybody was big in drones. Drones going to be package delivering all our Amazon, whatever other parcels overnight or even during daylight, and fly in and deliver food. And that has that happened? No, it didn't. And the reason is super simple,
Yeah.
right? If you want to make that available in a densely populated area around the globe, this thing needs to be aviation level secure.
Yeah.
Because even if you order a soup from a takeout and that's going to be delivered by a drone, if that pot of soup falls out of the sky at 100 meters,
Yeah.
it's going to be pretty deadly on impact on a human being, right? So obviously, the technology is not anywhere close to be that type of level secure. And then there are other elements, right? Now let's imagine that drone thing coming in. You and I are now in an enclosed area. We are in a room, right? I'm here in an office room. You're in a room too.
Yeah.
I have not seen a drone easily coming into the window.
Yeah.
Neither have I seen a drone suddenly go and ring a doorbell. Hey, Tom, your soup is here.
Not like
So what I
Minority
want to
Report
say,
all those films.
sorry,
Not like those films like Minority Report where they were trying to tell us. Yeah.
right? Might happen eventually, but we're not there yet, right? So what I want to say is sometimes I have the impression that some of these technologies, when they're hyped so much, um, kind of like some simple logic, some simple thinking would help to qualify whether they're valuable immediately or maybe it takes a bit more time.
Yeah.
Because all what I described to you, the security element, right? The ability to cross that last, not mile, but that last meter border, go on the doorbell, ring there.
Yeah.
Those were visible at the beginning of that drone hype. And people nevertheless fell for the drone hype. And today, well, it's probably parked where it needs to be
Mm.
into sort of research departments to figure out some of these things before coming back to that plateau of productivity. And then the plateau of productivity might look different than
Yeah.
what people thought at the beginning of the hype. Now,
Yeah.
with IoT, it's the same thing, right? Take IoT. We have a customer, industrial customer. They were, and they still are, super big in IoT.
Yeah.
I have seen presentations where they said, "Oh, how is that going to transform what they do?" They're in milling, right? And on a PowerPoint, it makes sense. They computed that applying IoT, as in being able to measure, as an example, the temperature of the mill where you do mill, because if that's too high, the output is of lesser quality, right? So if you have IoT sensors built in and you can kind of like constantly watch that, and even if you apply then some predictive elements to it, so you can say, hey, if you're not going to change, as an example, the pressure of the influx of corn or so a bit,
Yeah.
you might actually have a too high temperature there in 2 minutes. On a PowerPoint, it all makes sense.
Yeah.
It does. Just do this, and you immediately have 2, 3, 4 percentage points better productivity. And you know what? Multiply that by billions of tons of grain processed each year, and you have gigantic savings.
Yeah.
Everybody going wild. You
And I
know
think
what the
that's
truth?
sorry,
Sorry?
part of it I was going to say, Dorian, that it's scalable, right? So you can scale
Yeah,
it
it
across,
is
and that's why
on
people
the
love it.
PowerPoint. Now, the
Yeah.
hard truth is this: where do these mills stand? These
Yeah.
mills stand in places that are not necessarily connected to a broadband internet.
Yeah.
They're not in city centers where you have fiber. They're somewhere in an industrial area where there is no glass fiber yet, right?
Yeah.
Or these are mills where people are good at milling, but not necessarily at IT.
Yeah.
So, what happened? As an example, the connectors that connected the machines to the internet have had issues with too low bandwidths
Mm.
because the amount of data that they collected on the sensors was so much they had to kind of like feed on a Netflix level type data connectivity level, but there was only a small copper fiber there, right?
Yeah.
Flash. The whole program grinded to a halt, and obviously they're now multiple years behind the original lovely PowerPoint presentation.
Yeah.
Does that take away anything of the promise of the technology? No. They should double down,
Yeah.
but they should focus on 2 or 3 metrics maybe
Yeah.
instead of capturing all the data from the machine.
Yeah.
Because with that, they would still have enough data to make good predictions of how to better operate that machine to produce better outcomes,
Yeah.
but it would be adapted to the environments they operate in,
Yeah.
with low bandwidth connectivity for some time to come, where you need to have a super error-proof concept, because if it is not, with that type of machinery, you will never get to the operational levels you need to. So, IoT and so on, yes, it's here to stay. There is a data revolution going on,
Yeah.
but in many ways, I think the outcomes might be different than what people want to make us believe at the beginning.
Yeah, that's a very good way of summarizing it as well. Because I always see edge computing being a very sexy technology that's coming in, and people taking everything to the edge. And obviously, that I would imagine helps with those kind of problems, especially within manufacturing, making sure everything's secure, making sure you're on your own cloud servers, all of that kind of jazz that comes with it. But maybe we can just switch it up again, Dorian. So looking at it from maybe that's very commercial use, maybe from an end user. What's your viewpoint on a topic such as voice search at the moment, and how we're going to use that, and how we can use that data
Mhm.
from a commercial aspect for what people are using? Because to give people an example, I use voice more and more and more. People say, Tom, you're always sending me voice notes, or Tom, you're always sending things via video, because it's more immersive. It's more, I feel like I've got that connection point. And of course, that is data that can be used. What do
Yeah.
you think, Dorian?
Yeah. I would have a question. The colleagues and friends and business partners you sent those voice notes to, do they listen to the voice notes?
I
Do they
hope so.
listen to them or not?
I think so, yeah, because they reply in text, but they don't send me a voice note back. Well, not
They
all of them.
reply it in
Some of them
text.
do.
Okay.
Yeah.
The interesting piece, as an example, somebody like Zoom who introduced the Zoom phone,
Yeah.
you know what they do with those voice notes? They transcribe them, right? So you can read instead of listen.
Yeah.
So my point is this: we developed with local CH the biggest web proposition some years ago. Later on, it was acquired by the local incumbent telecoms company, and today it's a bit a shade of its past. But that said, kind of like we already at the time did discuss voice as an input medium. So
Yeah.
I think it has a place, voice, but it also has some drawbacks.
Yeah.
Let's think I go and search online the AI journal,
Yeah.
right? If I do that, and any one of the listeners can do that right now, you're going to get a result list that, depending where you are, what type of profile you have, you might find the AI journal on the first two or three results. But it's also highly likely, because both AI and journal are highly generic terms,
Yeah.
that you might not the AI journal be in those first results. So it might be that you come in results spot 7, 8, 9, 10, or even worse, above 10, right?
Yeah.
Now, eyes are better at absorbing this type of result list faster than by voice. Think of it. If I would read out that result list to you,
Yeah.
right? Here's result number one, Tom. The AI, whatever, academy, whatever, right? And they say no, skip to next. Then
Yeah.
you come and say, result list number two. I guarantee you, the second time you use this service, you switch it off.
Yeah.
It's simply,
You don't like the result.
listening is linear, right?
Yeah.
You cannot fast listen. You can make it go faster, like in Netflix, 2 times the speed. It does, but
Yeah.
not much more than that, right? So what I want to say is the output is the issue with voice search.
Yeah.
You will not listen to a 10 result page being read out to you. So if the voice input triggers a text output, why not?
Yeah.
Right? Because the other piece obviously is that a voice result list also kills, especially for the likes of Google, their commercial model.
Yeah. I haven't thought
Because
about
what you
that.
will
It's actually cool.
definitely not do is to listen first through 3 commercial ads of 10 seconds each,
Yeah.
the first 3 results being commercial, before you go to the organic first result at spot number 4. You
Yeah.
will not invest 30 seconds listening to those ads before getting to where you want to go to,
Yeah.
right? So I see promise in terms of voice input. I'm very skeptical in terms of a voice dialogue. In the moment, it is more about not necessarily a dialogue like we do, question answer and stressing at that. But
Yeah.
if it's more like you need to do a selection, like a result list, and then based on that selection, you need to initiate an action.
Yeah.
they are very skeptical about the voice output.
Yeah. That's such a good point you make, because I hadn't thought about that, Dorian, and how you look at it on. I just see all the stats again, and like we were saying earlier, overhyping something that 50% of searches are going to go to be voice. But looking at it from those kind of challenges it brings with it, I hadn't properly looked at it. And maybe I missed that because you get so caught up, like we were saying, in all the overhypeness that you think, well, actually, what is the, like we had someone comment here on our live at the moment saying you wouldn't imagine investments on the internet and what the internet can bring us today. It's fascinating to think of that, Dorian. Like what do we actually need to consider when trying to use these technologies, right?
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it would be a great point to move it on to looking at insight engines, so how people can use these data and what we can use to do and understand data and visualize data. What can visualizing your data unlock? What can people see? So we've had a few examples, and I guess we've looked at it already in a simple way of looking at the mill and looking at clients that you work with. But what other ways are there other examples that you know about that if you can visualize that data? What does it unlock for you as a business or as a person or someone in your local community? Maybe charities need to start using this to understand how to fund better and to phrase better. What do you think, Darren?
Well, obviously I have an angle here. I represent Squirro, so if I'm going to talk about that, I want to disclose that obviously to our viewers.
Oh, of course.
I do come from a specific angle, but obviously that specific angle also gives us a bit of grounding and depth in terms of the use cases we saw, right? So I'm
Yeah,
happily unpacking that for our viewers and listeners today in every level of detail. I think that's at the end interesting part of it, right?
yeah,
So what do we see? Many organizations, small, big, private, non-private, commercial, governmental or so, after especially last 2 years, right? After a fast-paced digitization effort, they will find themselves in a situation where they have effectively brought on a number of new tech solutions and a number of new applications.
yeah,
If you take a step back, many of these applications are effectively like boxes.
yeah,
You have a box that is entitled CRM. You have another box that is entitled Customer Management Support System, ITSM, whatever you want to call that box. Then you have a box that's called ERP for the core enterprise replenishment system, planning system, and so on. Then you have a box that says, I don't know, supply chain management, and then you have a box that's called Exchange, and then you have a box that's called HR. These are all technically disjointed, disconnected IT systems.
yeah,
Our industry is fantastic to go to the market and say, you need this box. Without this box, Tom, your business is probably going to the doldrums.
yeah,
Right? We are fantastic as an industry to do that.
yeah,
But for a company and an end user within that company, it effectively is kind of like a series of boxes where they don't know what's in the box.
yeah.
Right? Imagine, Tom, I would join the AI Journal today as a contributor and not just as a guest on your fantastic show today. How would I know what you guys have done in the past as other shows, what your commercial contracts are? You probably have that all in different boxes, right?
Correct. Yeah,
I can ask you, Tom, because you know about it, right?
yeah,
But finding it myself, it's going to be difficult because I don't know even the words you use to describe those contracts.
yeah,
It starts with that, right? Any new person joining a new company does not know what to look for. Why? Not because she's stupid or he's stupid, but simply because you are not yet ingrained in the vocabulary and in the setup of this particular organization or company.
yeah,
Hence, you can test out a few keywords on whatever search you have, but it will not provide good results.
yeah,
So if you take that as a starting position, what you obviously can do with technologies, by the way, like AI/machine learning,
yeah,
you can start to look at the data sets that you as a company possess.
yeah,
And what you can then do is you can then start to try to create a computational understanding of these data sets. What I want to say with that is take as an example a contract. A contract is a series of words that constitute a legally binding arrangement.
Yeah.
If you feed that to a computer without any further ado, do that to an Excel sheet, the best you can get out is the sum of words in that Excel sheet. At best.
Yeah.
At worst, it's called hashtag value, right? Error code.
Yeah.
Now, with techniques like machine learning, you can start to create a computational understanding of this text. That is, you start to apply a bit of that magic, let's call it, where you classify these documents to effectively add entities on that document, what this document is about.
Yeah.
And that entity, if it's well crafted, is ready to be computed.
Yeah.
Now, that's step one. The step two is I, as an example, create a profile of you, Tom. You're interested in, you just said it before, IoT as an example. You're interested in VR, a couple of other things. That creates a profile of yours, as we all know from the big social networks, right?
Yeah.
Now, if you have that profile of yours, Tom, interested in VR, and if I have that computational understanding of what's really in those documents across all these boxes I just described,
Yeah.
I can connect the two. I can connect it to. So in the moment something new pops up in one of those boxes about, say, VR, I can come to you, Tom, and say, here is something that you might want to have a look at, Tom. It's
Yeah.
about your interest. It's about VR, right? And what you've done with that simple thing, you actually have done the end of search. You have done the end of search. Instead of you going to information,
Information comes
the
to you.
relevant insight is coming to you
Yeah.
in the context of your work. And that's sort of the vision we have. And that's also what we foresee will happen in the world of too much data. In the world of too much data, it's not more relevant to have the data because you have it,
Yeah.
but it's relevant to have the right insights, and not to have right insights per se, but to have the right insights in context of what you do.
Yeah.
Because that will allow you to make a smarter decision.
Yeah.
To come back to that little example, do I, Tom, now want to invest my time, as an example, in talking to a boring Dorian, or do I want to invest my time into
Yeah.
looking at that new VR tech, right? Then you
Yeah.
can make a smarter decision about that. And the system will support you in this. It will not replace you in the decisioning, but it will support you to come to that smarter decision. And that's the way we see it. And that is applicable to small organizations, to big organizations, to any type of organization. That I think will happen in the future.
Yeah, I love it. You're opening a lot of awesome ideas here, Dorian. We've had Andrew Thomas comment, and he's commented saying AI powered data mining across your data pools is the next big market. And someone agreeing with you saying voice search results presented linearly via voice are difficult to the end consumers. This has caused smart speakers to now come with screens to present the
Yeah,
results visually and ads. So
yeah,
it's
I agree with Andrew. Very much so. It's exactly the point we discussed before.
yeah, I love it. And it kind of looks at, I want to look at it as well from, you gave great examples of what we can expect, how we can see it going forward. And it's awesome to see the passion you've got for it as well, Dorian. So if we can say, what can they kind of use this from? How can they use tools such as augmented intelligence? What can they really pull from that? You've touched on it in that last question, but are there certain results that you've seen in your past or
Yeah.
with areas or generic, of course, to just say, these are the kind of things you can realize?
Yeah, sure. Again, disclosure here, I'm happily speaking about obviously customer of ours because there I know the use case and I know the impact, right?
Of course.
I do not want to come here salesy, but I want to explain to the audience what is possible, right?
Yes.
So Candrium, as an example, one use case, right? Candrium is, we call that sales insights. Candrium is a mid-sized asset management house
Yeah.
based in Paris. Their business is they allocate pension monies into funds. So yours, mine, whoever is listening in here today, their pension money is collected through their pension scheme, and the pension scheme allocates that to different so-called asset managers, and these asset managers then allocate that into, as an example, I don't know, industrial companies in Western Europe, or I don't know, automotive in Asia, whatever it is, right? These type of funds.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, there's a highly competitive market, and Camdrim obviously tries to capture a bit of that market. How have they done it before? They have an entire team of analysts that look at what the pension schemes have as mandates, because the pension schemes don't simply come and say, Tom, I have 100 million. They come and say, I want to allocate 100 million into fast moving consumer goods in, say, the US type of
Yeah.
companies. So they go to the market, they say post that mandate, and then asset management companies like Camdrum do that research and see, oh, do my fund maybe fit this? Do other funds maybe fit that, and all that, right?
Yeah.
Pretty cumbersome, complex process because you need to triangulate the number of data points. Your
Yeah.
funds, the pension mandates, how the competitors are doing this, and so on and so on. And technology, like I described before, can automate this. So today at Camdrum, we effectively take Camdrum's funds, the Camdrum fund reporting, we take the market reporting about competing funds to Camdrum funds, and we
Yeah.
take the publicly available pension mandates. We triangulate this and effectively give to an account management person at Camdrum a simple screen, a super simple screen.
Yeah.
Tom, here are three pension mandates where the Camdrum funds that you represent are better performing or better matching to the request they have and than those competing funds. What is this? This is a sales lead.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, I'm not allowed to talk publicly about the economic impact, just to say that they tested that sort of in an A/B group setting a year ago in the middle of the pandemic. And I can tell you that the group that got the tool versus the group that didn't get the tool,
Yeah.
they outperformed the first group by miles. The ROI of the project is spectacular. Within less than 12 months, they have every single cost penny, whether they pay us or their internal costs, has been earned back.
Yeah.
Why? It's at the end, it's trivial. At the end, the data was there, the opportunity was there in the market. But for us humans, it's difficult to figure out those finer little details in those different price sheets and research sheets on a consistently high level of quality, pull that together and present that to Tom, to you, as a simple little insight card. A
Yeah.
computer can do that much better. That is the fundamental piece. Changes the game forever. These guys make tons of money with such an implementation. It's
Yeah.
one example. Or another example, if I may, right,
Please. Yeah. This
is
is awesome.
another example that is in the same way game changing. We are privileged to work with Standard Chartered, that I'm sure many on this show know.
Yeah.
They're the sponsor of the jerseys of the football club Liverpool, right?
Yeah.
But also a big bank, and especially in the Asian market, probably the largest transaction bank, as I understand.
Yeah.
And that is a multi-currency, multi-regulatory environment. Many of these banks have lots of legacy systems, right?
Yeah.
So in the best of places, things go wrong. I wire you 10 million for I buy a machine from you, and for whatever reason, my transaction order left my office just a tad too late. It fell through the cracks. Cut-off time for the wiring wasn't there, and what do we do? You're going to be angry tomorrow morning because the money is not there and you already shipped the machine, and I'm going to be very angry because yes, I did wire the money, but it's not there with you. What do? We write angry emails to SCB or whoever the correspondent bank is that we employ.
Yeah.
SCB gets literally dozens of millions of such long-threaded complaints a year.
Yeah.
That is not that they do a bad job. It simply speaks about the volumes they transact every day. They
Yeah.
transact literally every day, that's public knowledge, multiple times the GDP of an economy like the UK, which is insane if you think it through. In
Yes.
monetary terms, right? It's lots of obviously forex transaction speculation. Anyway, fact is they get millions of these elements, right?
Yeah.
Now, apply an insights engine like ours and go and identify what is the root cause in these tickets. What do these people talk about by comparing those tickets to past such cases?
Yeah.
Because the Singapore dollar to say UK pound transaction failed, that's not the first time. That happened many times before. And machine learning is good at that pattern detection, right? Do that with a bit of ingenuity that my co-founder Tony developed, and by now we were able to predict the correct product group, the reason why it went wrong, the expected time of resolution, on average, way above 95% in terms of precision.
Yeah.
Now, 95% is just a number, but what it does on the ground is it shrinks the time to resolve an issue by between 20 to 30, sometimes even 40%.
Yeah.
So instead of you both being angry at each other and angry at the bank now can come to you and say to us, hey, sorry, cutoff point missed. It's going to be wired tomorrow morning. Instead of this being a lengthy 2, 3, 4 day affair of figuring out what happened.
Yeah.
That's game changing. My pitch to the bank has been they should not think this just in a linear fashion. I do faster case resolution, but they should think about this as a true business opportunity.
Yeah.
Because they can construct the weekend better. The weekend being a multi-regulatory, multi-currency situation where things happen.
Yeah.
And suddenly they can come in there with a proposition where they say, we recognize this, but by recognizing it, we can actually I can say that, introduce a service that has a higher degree of reliability for you.
Yeah.
Guess what that does in the market? That played well, improves their competitive position by a mile.
Yeah. And
These
I
are two
think,
examples. There are many more, but these
yeah.
are examples that fascinate me massively because it shows what is possible by going at data in a pragmatic, consistent way. You can fundamentally transform these business propositions and open up new possibilities for these businesses.
Yeah. And I don't think I'm the only person because we had Sebastian chime in as well, saying these are great insights. So looking at it from this angle, I really appreciate Dorian because it's you never think about what goes on behind the scenes to get what you see, what happens. And I always look at it from if you look at a computer or if you look at anything, like what's actually happening behind the scenes, I'd have no idea that there's dozens of millions of all these different
Yeah.
transactions and the amount of headaches that causes. HR teams must have a nightmare, like all these different aspects that impact it. And if you can bring that down, I think like not that this relates to technology, but it's like 1% every day. It's 365% over the year, right? So it's kind of the same model
Compound effect. Yeah.
as how you can just improve, gradual improvement of doing that. So I think you've
That's
just
actually a great insight of yours, Tom, right? What we also saw is don't shoot for the moon,
yeah.
but go exactly what you do exactly what you said. It's enough to make a 1% change a day.
Yeah.
The compound effect over time
Yeah.
is massive, is absolutely massive.
Yeah.
So that combination, we think that what you just said is such a key to it.
Yeah. No, so it's something I always look at to try and think, don't try and rush something or do something, which I think we were alluding to earlier as the big hype. So everyone wants to rush behind it and to wider programs such as maybe wider digital initiatives or digital transformation programs. People just dive in head first, not actually know, like we were saying earlier, what is your roadmap? What do you want out of this project? What data do you need? What language data do you need to understand? And all of a sudden, using your example that you're talking about, you can have all these complaints and it's you're working quicker, but are you working smarter? And are you working for a longer term picture? Arguably not. So it's always important for the audience to think about that. So I really appreciate Dorian. And I'd like to come to one question I want to ask before we wrap up is looking at, we haven't touched on it, Polaroid analytics. Give me a bit of, I don't know, I'll be fully transparent with the audience. I don't know too much around Polaroid analytics and I kind of guess snapshot reports and everything. Is it something we should be excited around, Dorian?
Polaroid analytics. Where have you picked it up? Have you picked it up with us or somebody else in the marketplace?
So I've heard it as a saying at the moment, and it's basically saying analytics on a day-to-day snapshot point. So what you can do with analytics that come through on a daily basis,
Yeah.
how you can work that to a bigger picture, and it kind of gives you a Polaroid snapshot. It's
Yeah.
it's an interesting term, and I was wondering, yeah, what I mean.
Because I sometimes poke a bit fun at some of how analytics is done today.
Yeah.
Right? You just to your point, Tom. Right? You create a lovely looking dashboard with the likes of Tableau or Click or whatever. Right?
Yeah.
Super proud about it, and then after half a year, super disappointed that nobody looks at that dashboard.
Yeah.
And that dashboard effectively does simply once a day or maybe refresh rate once every 15 minutes or so produce the latest figures.
Yeah.
But then you have a kind of like dashboard fatigue setting in, right? You always look at that same dashboard.
Yeah.
And that's what I call Polaroid analytics indeed. That's often I call that way.
Yeah.
And the point I make is would you enjoy looking at Netflix if you only would look at still pictures on Netflix?
No,
No,
absolutely not.
obviously not, right?
Yeah,
Obviously not. There was a time when there was no film industry, when there
yeah,
were no moving pictures, when it was only still pictures. The photography started with still pictures only, right?
yeah,
And obviously people were super excited because that was the first time that you could transport a visual representation of an object from that object itself, right? I could send you a postcard and you can watch, as an example, the Eiffel Tower without being present in Paris, right? That was the breakthrough of photography, that you could disconnect the physical object from its representation of that object.
yeah,
But looking the entire day at that one postcard you got from me from the Eiffel Tower starts to be a bit boring, right? Like still pictures on Netflix.
yeah,
And if you look back into those days, obviously they realized that soon and started to produce the first, how it is often described to today, still moving pictures. A
yeah,
film is moving pictures. It's, what is it, 24 frames a second or so, right?
yeah.
To make it a moving picture, to make it a film, to make it a moving pictures, right?
And now they use it as a sales tool as well, just to cut in, because
Yeah,
if you're
absolutely.
on
The
gaming, they
point
say
is,
how many frames you can do. So
if you go back to the early days of the movie industry,
yeah,
the early days where you had effectively still moving pictures. They created a still here, they created a still there, they created a still there, and start to put them together. And
yeah,
people were pretty bored. Then they started to kind of like act, they danced. You know those black and white movies from the days, right?
yeah,
Um, and what they did is they still kind of like choreograph this like a sequence of still pictures. It took the early movie industry about 2 decades to 3 decades to figure out how to rethink the way you tell a story if it's a movie versus a sequence of stills,
yeah,
right? And if you talk about Polaroid analytics, I think we're going to go into a movie style analytics where you're constantly told, hey, this machine is, I don't know, too hot or too cold, or here's an insight about a customer of yours. But we haven't fully figured out how the equivalent of that movie element works for analytics.
yeah,
So we're still sort of in that still picture era of the early yeah, movie type thing, and we're
yeah,
not yet in the full movie Netflix style representation of what analytics can do.
yeah,
Because what we need to do, we need to rethink the way we represent those numbers, right? To come
yeah,
back to the analogy, you would be totally bored if I always have the same, simply kind of like moving, I don't know, donut or temperature gauge or so, visualization of your sales relationship, right?
yeah,
You're going to be immediately bored again. So we need to rethink the way we would transport the information about how that relationship is going.
yeah,
Maybe once you have kind of like a traffic light system, hey, red, you need to do something, Tom, or then you maybe have some key KPIs that indicate kind of like, I don't know, contract volume. Then in the next stage, you have, after transition, you maybe have the timeline, how that develops over time, but how to stitch that together into continuous, insightful way to explain, as an example, a customer relationship we and I believe no one in the market has yet fully mastered.
yeah,
But that's the way I see it going, because we're all going to be ultimately feel bored by polar rate analytics. We're going to be dumped. We're not going to get anything out of it at one stage.
yeah. Won't distract us enough, like our phones becoming more. They need more impact, more ways to look at it. And I really
You
like your.
remember? You remember Flickr? You remember Flickr was
Uh,
one of the biggest
yeah,
photo
the brand.
communities, right?
Yeah,
Right. There were others before that, but Flickr at one stage was leading. What's the leading content format on phones today? Is it Flickr or is it TikTok?
it's TikTok, isn't it? Because they got more searches than Google alone or something. I saw it's
And TikTok is moving pictures,
yeah,
right? So
quick
that
chat.
transition from Flickr to TikTok will eventually happen in business analytics too.
Yeah,
Instead of simply having a dashboard here and there, like the Flickr Times, you will have a TikTok style thing that tells you an engaging story about, as an example, that customer relationship.
Yeah. Storyboarding data analytics. I quite like it. So storyboarding it in a better way. And using your example as well, Dorian, from looking at it from films, it's similar to, I guess, how, and I don't know if you've seen it, but was it James Cameron that went back and colorized all of the World War II footage? And like, he made
I saw some of those pictures.
So maybe we go back and we reimagine what the data we're actually looking at maybe 10 years from now, and we look back at data of 50 years and think we can actually understand a piece of time or something through data. It's I got that same kind of picture in my head. I don't know why. But
I'm pretty sure our children will laugh at us when we come up to a holiday party and say 2050, should we still be around? As old dudes, right? You, Tom, and me, and our children have a great laugh at us if we show them some of the dashboards we were so proud about in 2022.
yeah.
I'm pretty sure about that one. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I heard a similar thing to just say as well. I think it was from Gary Vaynerchuk, who's quite big on the social sphere and social market. And he was saying how, obviously, for my parents, they don't have many pictures to show me or many videos. And it's like the wedding photo was only just about in color. For us, we're videoing everything. So our kids are going to, it's already happening today. But when I have kids, whenever that is, it will be showing them, they'll be able to see my whole life almost, like in so much more detail, and maybe they'll laugh at it, but also that kind of experience that they can see of that. Like maybe we'll all be running around with headsets on, just videoing everything. It's crazy to think what they'll be able to see and understand, and how quickly we can learn new aspects. It's what I love around these emerging topics, and around topics like data analytics, to storyboard those pictures. So important.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great way to end it. So really, really fascinating points, Dorian. I really appreciate you coming on today and looking at everything and giving great examples, giving you ideas of where we're going. So just leave the audience. Where can they find out more about you? Where can they find out more about Squirro? I've seen Gloria put a few notes in here, but where can they, is there anything that you've got coming up, or they can find out more about you, Dorian?
Sure. Come to our webpage, squirro.com. All the case studies are there that we have. Give us a ping. My address is dorian@squirro.com. Ping me. Happy to get going and share insights. We love to do that for a simple reason, right? We just made the point about connecting stills to a moving picture. I do sincerely believe we're only at the start of this revolution. The world will look very different in a very near term future, and to engage with the audience here today or beyond today would be fantastic. We happily share insights we have, and together construct that storyboarded analytics future together, right, Tom?
Yeah.
So thank you very much for having me. It was a fantastic hour we spent together, Tom, and very inspiring to talk to you today.
Thank you, Dorian. Really appreciate it, and great to have you on. First of many, I'm sure. And thank you to the audience for joining. It's been a brilliant session with you today, wherever you've been tuning in from around the world. If you couldn't make this session today, it will be recorded and be on our LinkedIn page. So make sure you tune in and hear about all the great discussions. And I've really enjoyed it, learning around aspects I haven't considered on voice search, data analytics, how data analytics is going to change to moving videos. I really love it, and it's going to be a great one for you to look at, learn from, and we'll catch you for the next one. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.